Hey, Tom.
Why, hi, Meg. It's us again.
It is us again.
It's us again talking on a Monday
Chit-chatting. Because it's Mondays.
with Meg.
And Tom.
And we're talking about Pentecost today.
Pentecost.
And you're sitting here learning a lot real fast to talk
I do,
about
yeah.
Pentecost.
That's really happening right now.
Which is all right. That's part of what the videos are. I mean, we're talking about kind of boring stuff about Pentecost. Another special day in our church calendar. The only time I get to wear the red stole, except when we ordain people, then I also get to wear the red stole in ordination. But normally,
Oh.
I just
Oh, that seems like it goes together.
I get to wear the red stole when the day comes when we ordain you.
Will you get to be there for that?
If you invite me.
Okay, cool.
You may hate me by then.
No.
It may be done with.
No.
So
I keep thinking about that. I'm like,
about hating me?
doesn't it? No. They usually take place on Sundays in such and such in the new church, and then it's you have to be here.
I can take a day off. I can get a sub to come in.
Cool.
I can make
I've been
it
worried
happen.
about that. Didn't know how to voice that worry.
It can act. You could actually come back here to have it done. You don't. It doesn't have to be the new church. It's up to you.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
You can have it wherever you want. I mean, you could use this as your home church.
Good to know. Cool.
You get to make that choice.
Cool. Oh, yay. That'll be exciting. Okay, but Pentecost.
Pentecost. Back to Pentecost. A little bit of other stuff.
Pentecost.
So Pentecost is Book of Acts.
Mm-hmm. Beginning.
Right there at the beginning. Little factoid at the beginning. Pentecost is not a special name for this day in that, somehow in that name Pentecost
We have
is about the Holy Spirit coming and filling the apostles. Pentecost was a festival, and you're good Greek, right? Pente, 50.
Okay.
Pentecost.
Haven't had that word yet, so
Pentecost is 50 days after
Passover.
Passover. It is a
It's a feast.
Harvest
Yeah.
festival.
Barley harvest.
Barley harvest.
Barley harvest.
The barley harvest. And really, it's explaining why these people were in Jerusalem to begin with. The people in the crowd.
Because there is a crowd.
Yeah, they're
There's
there
like a
to celebrate
significant amount of people.
the day of Pentecost.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was my first learning bit.
Right.
In this moment was.
But now Pentecost has become this day rather than we're not celebrating the barley harvest
Right.
on Sunday.
We don't celebrate it. Would would modern Jewish folks celebrate the feast?
Do not know if modern Jewish folks
that's
celebrate Pentecost. My guess is no, since it's kind of specific. If according to the notes, it's specific to a certain harvest, unless it somehow becomes something different. But I do not have an answer for that.
Interesting.
I don't think it is.
That's okay.
But it could be.
Cool. Interessante. But yeah, so that was my learning thing, was that it's not, or maybe now it's Pentecost and we have the day.
Right.
But
I mean, if it was fish juggling day and that was the celebration, they were celebrating fish juggling,
probably would have changed.
then
it.
we would be celebrating fish juggling. That would suddenly be our name for it. But it was just a pre-existing
We have
holiday, holy day.
the Ithkis,
Ithkis juggling.
which is the Greek word for fish.
What's the Greek word for juggling?
I don't know how.
They don't juggle in the New Testament, do they?
They might. Somebody might. That's funny. So why do we? So story of Pentecost. I guess we'll talk about the story of Pentecost before
We'll get the story
why.
first.
Yeah.
So the whole story is the Holy Spirit coming and filling the apostles,
Mm-hmm.
kind of empowering them in a sense. This is the baptism by the Holy Spirit. It's to do something.
Yes.
And to me, that's, the gift that's given on this day is to be able to speak. They can suddenly speak and understand different languages. But so the people they run out into Jerusalem and are able to talk to, those people are from all around and have different languages. And so it is in the, just the bare bones of the story itself. I don't know if bare bones is, but just in a very just story level, they're able, if you were a French-speaking Jew who had shown up to Jerusalem that day, then I can talk to you in French, and I understand what you're saying, and we're able to tell the story. So I mean, that's the story part of it.
Right.
The larger meaning piece has more to do with we now celebrate the Spirit coming into the church, that sort of sending out the gifting of the church of different spiritual gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, some, I always thought it was kind of cheesy, but I know some do the birthday cake and celebrate more. This is the birth of the church.
Birthday
the
cake.
Breath of God comes into the body. The Spirit of God comes into the body, animating the body. All kinds of those kinds of ideas.
Well, it's like, and this comes from. This is the manifestation, may or may not be the right word, but this is like when John says, "He who comes after me will baptize you with fire and the Holy Spirit." This is that.
This is kind of what happening. Yeah, in a sense, that's the story.
And then the same thing at the end of like the Ascension story, when it's like, or at least in Acts, at the end of the Ascension story, when it's wait here until the power of God comes upon you.
Until it comes. Right. So I mean, yeah, from the story we talked about last time to this story, all they've done is
they've just picked a new disciple.
They threw lots. Matthias. Matthias, how many stories do we have about Matthias? Matthias replaced Judas, who meets a very grisly end in the Luke Acts telling. And then they go back to that upper room and pray. And they're up there. The apostles never leave Jerusalem in Luke and Acts. In Matthew and Mark, as I was saying earlier, the message is to go to Galilee. And actually, at the end of Matthew, Jesus meets them on a mountaintop in Galilee. Right. And that's where things begin, and he gives them the Great Commission. That's the way Matthew tells the story.
I think that has a lot more to do with like Jesus being a Galilean. Like, I think it's the going home thing.
You go back, it goes back to where it begins.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, I know we're getting way off here, but Matthew, I always love the telling of Matthew, because, we focus always on the Great Commission, go out into all the world, teaching what I've taught you, making disciples, and that sort of thing. But he's there on the mountaintop, and they make the trip all the way back to Galilee, and it says quite clearly that some standing there, they still don't really believe that it's him. I always love that little detail. That always makes me laugh.
Chuckle.
In a sense. But way in Mark, and talking about, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit last week, to me in Mark, what it does is it takes us back to the beginning of the ministry, which kind of does the same thing that Luke is trying to do here, which says, it's yours now.
Right.
You have to travel this path. And so in Mark, the implication is now you go out. And it's still going out into the world and doing things. But since Luke actually tells the story of the early church, it's stated, this is when it happens. causes some problem for those who are real literal about the Gospels, and they all have to match up and be perfect, because they can't both stay in Jerusalem and go to Galilee. But that's a story for another day.
Interesting. My brain is thinking about that one now.
Well, don't think about that.
Okay, not thinking. All right, so they're filled with the Holy Spirit. We have the sudden ability to speak and understand each other's languages, which kind of freaks the people out.
Yeah.
Like, that really gets them. It's the
it freaks them out, but it gets their attention.
It does get their attention.
Right, and this is not the ecstatic speaking in tongues. They're not doing that kind of stuff. You know, when we think of Pentecostals, they are more about the ecstatic.
Right.
You know, they've kind of, to me, co-opted the word a little bit.
Yeah.
And,
well, yeah, because it's
that
like
kind of ecstatic spiritual event. This is
it's very clear.
It's very clear and practical.
The own languages and the languages of the people who were there.
And, you know, again, just to kind of, I don't know if irony is the right word. You know, it gives them a gift. The Spirit gives them a gift so they can truly meet people where they're at. They talk to them in their own language. It connects people.
Right. They get to share the story.
Right. And that connection is what's important. And what I was going to say, it's kind of ironic with the Pentecostal movement and such with us now. When you think of Pentecostals, often their speaking in tongues and ecstatic stuff alienates people and disconnects because you don't understand it.
Right.
There always has to be some interpreter who comes along, and it's the same kind of thing that Paul in his letters kind of warned folks about.
Right.
That, you know, you may think it's really cool and great and you're special, but you know what? It's not connecting you. It's not. It's you're not spreading the good news. You're doing this thing, and somebody, you know, it freaks people out.
Yeah. Well, like, this should never be used to tear people apart.
Well, but it also,
to mess things up.
Whenever we separate like that, there's always those who think I'm a higher form of Christian because I'm able to do the ecstatic tongue speaking, and you are a lower form because you cannot do that sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
that kind of, I think, reveals more of our sinful nature again, to divide and separate. But Pentecost is all about people coming together. You know, the birth of the church should bring people together. The Spirit within working within the church should bring people together. You go out and meet them where they are for who they are, period. And you take that good news to them that way.
That's my job.
That's what evangelism is.
That's my job.
Right, and it does. It kind of sets up what we're trying to do with evangelism.
Right.
We know that there's people out there who aren't going to connect with the church, or because of all the stuff they hear,
We've been so burned by the capital C church.
Right. You know, you've got the latest Southern Baptist controversy. We had the Catholic controversy over that. There's always some church melting down, church charismatic leader melting down, and you're learning how they did wrong or this or that. You know, the church has damaged so many people.
Right.
For us just to say, well, they'll come. All we have to do is open the doors and come in.
Right.
It's not realistic.
It's not how it works. Right.
It's not. You know, it's not true to the story.
Right.
They have to leave that upper room.
Right.
And go out into the streets and connect with folks.
Right.
And I think that's important. I think it's important we connect and.
Well, yeah, it's like there's also, in thinking about like connecting with folks like now, like folks who have been hurt by the church and people who are kind of over it all.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then how do you create a space inviting them or showing them that the church that they might have been used to, or the church that hurt them isn't what this is.
I think part of that is, again, just to keep using this phrase, it's meeting them where they're at.
Right.
When you go out, as Parkway, as we're sending you out to be an evangelist, which means just somebody go out and just kind of tell that good news, or you call it outreach as well. Your goal is not conversion.
Right.
Your goal is to live your faith in relationship with other people.
Right.
And if they see something in your faith, or you're able to give them some healing because of the demands of a church put upon them,
right.
that were damaging to who they were,
right.
or just kind of bizarre, toxic demands. I mean,
right.
the problem with a lot of churches in Christendom, I guess that's the way to put it, is they've gotten so Pharisaic,
right.
and if you don't believe like we
backwards.
believe, like we tell you, you have, it's all about believing correctly, not how is the Spirit living
right.
in you and through you, or how's this faith molding your character.
Right.
It's all litmus tests, and are you believing like,
right. Can you check the same boxes
like everyone else is?
Yeah. I think about it,
because if you're not a real Christian.
You're not a real Christian, right?
And gets get beaten up that way all the time.
In my head, I think about it a lot as like the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point someone tried to start the Church Too hashtag or something along those lines. It was like that. It's kind of the same thing. Not the same thing, but kind of the same thing. I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, it's still. I mean, if we're talking about people again,
right.
if Pentecost is more, it is the story of the Spirit coming
right.
in, but it's the Spirit coming in to connect us to people.
Right, giving them the ability to connect with other people.
How we relate to people,
right.
as an element of our faith is very, very important.
Is a huge part of it. Yeah.
And so if the way I relate to you is a dominating or a gaslighting or
right.
really kind of
charismatic, abusive leader, yeah.
Right. It's abusive in some way.
Right.
Then that's not of the Spirit. That's not bringing
right.
people together.
Right.
That's again
divisive.
where sin is division.
Right.
Sin is missing the mark. Sin is breaking things apart.
Right.
And it's difficult. It's hard. And it's especially hard if the church you are a part of, everything is about who you're not relating to, and you're always against these people. How do you have Pentecost when your central doctrine is about being against
right.
people?
Right.
It almost be like in the story, the language of there's a big list, the Medes, what is it? The Medes, the Elamites,
residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, right. Asia, on and on and on, Egypt.
But not pick a not Cappadocia, but not Cappadocians.
No
because
Cappadocians
we're not supposed to speak to the Cappadocians. So nobody was given the ability to talk to Cappadocians, because Cappadocians are black, and that sounds goofy, or Cappadocians in there. Good for them.
Good for them.
But that's how we often act too much, but not those
right,
people.
But not those people.
That's when we get subsumed by, the us versus them. Us
right.
versus them is not Pentecostal. Us versus them is sin.
Right.
It's sin in action.
Period.
Period.
That's that. I do like in the story the next part, because they're all amazed and perplexed. but some of them sneer and say, they are filled with new wine. And that's when Peter goes, hold on. It's 9 a.m. They are not drunk. Listen here.
Hey.
And then he launches into his sermon.
His big long sermon.
For like 30 verses.
Right. And tells them the story.
Right.
And again, a lot of it's telling the story. And he doesn't pull any punches.
No, he tells the story.
He tells the story pretty harshly. But it convinces folks. I mean, as the story goes. I mean, with Acts, there's always people joining the movement. I mean, that's part of what the story of Acts is.
Right.
It's people coming in. Again, it's people being drawn to God and connecting to God. It's repenting, and the kingdom has come near, and here they are.
Well, it's like the beginning of the first Christian community. That's what's being built by all of this.
And even with Pentecost, even with these different languages and everything, it's still very small because it's Jews. It's still the Jewish community.
Right.
Now they may be from other place,
right?
But it's the Jewish movement. I mean, to me, the interesting thing about Acts is it is the throwing of a stone into a pond or whatever, into water, and the ripples go out.
Yeah.
And so if Christ is the stone, whoosh, even the movement is the spirit, and the ripples first hit the people, the Jewish folks,
right,
in Jerusalem, who happen to be, and then it goes out and it keeps expanding. They're like, well, what about these? Is it Samaritans? I mean, they still have to hit the Samaritans or something, or the Greek Jews. What about the Jews that are primarily Greek, that aren't Judean? And we'll encompass them too. And it just keeps going out and keeps going out. And that's the thing about Acts. If it's bringing people together, Acts doesn't get to a point where the circle stops spreading.
Right, it keeps going.
It keeps spreading. And what's interesting is the people within Acts think it's not going to go any further.
Right.
This is as far as it goes.
It can only go so far.
And then it goes next. So you have, those surprising people that get that you meet up with, like the Ethiopian eunuch. Well,
oh yeah, because
the
he's
Ethiopian eunuch should not be included,
right?
According to the Old Testament laws. But nope, we include that. I mean, and when you get to finally the breaking of the Gentiles,
right,
which is us versus them,
right,
in its purest scriptural form,
right.
Once that barrier is broken,
then
there's no end to it.
Right, because then it really can just keep going.
Except for what we in the church continually try to build our walls and say, nope, this is as far as we go, no further.
Oh no.
We can't. God's love does not go to those people on the other side or that people or whatever. We can't just be with them.
Sometimes it blows my mind that's still like I don't know, that the church does that people in the church do that.
It's become a default sort of thing.
Did you not hear any of this? Were you not listening?
No.
Clearly. Like, that's really, sometimes that's how I feel with it. It just gets so divisive that it's just like, bruh, did you listen to anything Jesus said and taught and did? Do you know, like, were you paying attention when he sat down with them and not you? Like.
And the hardest thing is, for the most part, he was just with these people.
Right.
And listened to them.
Right.
And
Well, he did the thing. He met them where they were at.
He met them where they were at. And to me, again,
that's what Pentecost is about.
That's the story of Pentecost. And that's the ongoing story of our faith.
Right.
Is meeting people where they're at without an agenda.
Right.
Right? We've talked about, especially for Presbyterians, I'm not out to save your soul.
Right.
I can't do that.
That's not my job.
That's the wonderfulness of predestination and
it's above my
and saying all that is done by God.
Right.
There's not a method. There's not a trick. There's not a special prayer.
Right.
That's all God's decision.
Right.
And amazingly enough, I mean, if you think about who God is, you know, again,
right. When you think about the character of God, then that should kind of let you know that
right,
it is not an us and a them.
Us.
Right.
But it's still the hardest thing is to be with somebody and not try to fix them or change them, but first to be with them.
Right.
I don't think that's I think that's a spiritual gift maybe we should be praying for today's Pentecost, is how to just first just be.
Well, how do you just be? Yeah.
How do
you hold the
people?
space and you just, yeah. That's what I used to, and working with the teenagers up in Maine,
Mm-hmm.
that would always be someone would have a tantrum and they would just walk away. And so I was always the one who, I wouldn't escalate the situation because I usually wouldn't say anything. I would just go sit there close to them and say, I'm going to occupy the same space with you.
Mm-hmm.
Just know that I'm here. We're just going to share this space for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And if and when you feel ready to say something or do something, I'm still sitting here.
And that's countercultural.
Right.
That's countercultural for us, not just in our, American culture, but I think it's counterculture in our Christian culture.
Right.
We have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
Just, let me first be here.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like at some point we stopped asking, well, what do you need right now? Like in this moment, what do you need?
Maybe not even asking that.
Well, I think that's part of it. Like, I think
that might be later.
Yeah.
Because first you have to, if we're going to use our theological language, first you have to be, oh no. I was ready to use my theological language and then it disappeared.
First you have to.
When Jesus takes flesh, when the Word becomes flesh, it's called, first you have to.
When he becomes incarnate?
Incarnate. You have to be incarnate. You have to be, Jesus became flesh. And first, that's it.
Right.
You have to be there in the flesh,
right.
in a sense, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
First, it's being there.
I see that.
And Jesus didn't ask immediately, what do you need?
Right. He's just there.
First, he's got to be there.
Yeah.
I got to get there first. Not distant, not far away,
no.
not,
but there,
in some
the
sort of role of a high holy,
is.
and I'm high
right.
holy, and you're down,
and you're not,
and you're down lowly, and all that stuff. So
yeah.
that's
the.
I think that's again.
Well, I think you have a sermon idea
practice.
Now for Sunday.
I don't know where we'll go.
I think that's framing it in such a way that it's like, well, like the real, like the goodness of Pentecost is not only that it's not just that the Holy Spirit comes on to the disciples that are there.
And you get special powers.
Right.
Special superhero powers.
It's the fact that they've been given the gift to go out, to see people and meet people where they're at. To be able to hear them in their own native tongue and to share with them in their own native tongue.
Yeah, first to kind of become incarnate with
right.
that person.
To be able to be in the space.
To be in the space, to be in the flesh, in the space.
Yeah.
But again, think about where we're at today with our tribalism and individualism. Right. All that stuff is kind of rampant and crazy and we're so stuck to ideologies that even when terrible tragedies happen, we can't break out of it. We're in the age of the double down.
Right.
I'm going to deny it and cut off any kind of empathy because I don't want to have to change where I'm at or how or all my whatevers. You will not change me.
Right.
You will not melt my heart. You will not get in.
Watch me.
But then I think we're also, why are we also, this is the loneliest time. I think we're just an era where people feel so alone and disconnected. I think, again, that's where Pentecost and faith, this is part of why faith is so important these days. Not, again, to try to, as we were talking a lot at Easter, not to give me some sort of special dispensation so that I can get my whatever.
Right.
I mean, that's not what it is. At the very base of it, you're connecting with people. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we think, it kind of, I was going to say, sometimes, we always think that the other person is the, goodness gracious, is an afternoon of dropping words. I had cookies for lunch and I should not have eaten that fourth cookie for lunch. When you have the skin disease. See, it's
leprosy.
Like leprosy. You're always the leper, but sometimes we're the leper that need to, that come to you. See, I lost the word so much I lost my train of thought. Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah. My train of thought derails often. Sometimes it takes out passengers on the way. Fiery crash.
But again, that's our greatest hope with you. You seem to have the ability to, cut through some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. People, I guess, don't feel as threatened by you initially, or that you don't come on strongly. Well, then they have to get to know you
later on. Then
later on, you can threaten them.
I'm like a prickly pear.
But initially, they may actually sit down and be with you, and share, whether it is pain or our doubts or our, the anger or whatever the case may be. That's keeping them disconnected from something. Because, it's still being able to say, I hear you. I understand why you feel that way.
Right.
And then not saying anything after that.
Right. We're just going to sit here.
Now let me tell you how I'm going to fix you and make you... No, first you gotta...
Well, that's the other thing. It's like... And this is probably another topic for a different day, but the whole fixing people thing. Guess what?
Doesn't work.
You can't fix anybody.
No.
They have to want to fix, change, whatever, insert word here. That's on them.
Right.
That's not on.
So a lot of discipleship is just coming alongside other people on their own journeys.
Right.
And I think that's, again, where we set ourselves up to fail a lot of times in the church. Mm-hmm. When we begin to demand...
Well, it's like we don't come alongside people.
No, we create this thing that you're supposed to put on yourself.
Right.
So, and people readily do, all those elements that make up cultish type behavior. Mm-hmm. You have to stop listening to this type of music. Right. You have to dress a certain way.
You have to eat this.
You begin to learn the lingo, and you all speak in a certain lingo. Right. Those are kind of...
And then one day you drink the Kool-Aid and you die. That's...
But those are certain cultish things, and then that breaks. I mean, that's to me, that is still that desire to connect with people, but we connect in ways that...
It's like we connect
is artificial.
In the wrong way. Yeah.
That is...
It's not authentic.
It's not authentic. It's authoritarian. It's somebody who's declaring and using their authority to create this
power I have
unified thing. So we get rid of individuality for this false picture.
Right.
So again, one of the traps we've talked about with a lot of evangelicalism is it came with all this culture buy-in. Mm-hmm. There was this whole culture bubble. And with this sort of underlying thing, if you just live in this culture bubble, and do all the right performative stuff, you would have blessings and peace and whatever. But that's all, authoritarian falsehoods.
Right. Well, that's not You're not coming beside.
Right. So when something actually happened, there was nothing there.
Right.
You know, there was just a shell, there was just a surface. But I have nothing there to really deal with whatever this might be, whether it's a death of a loved one or when finally the list of who I'm supposed to hate gets just to be too much,
right.
and I just can't sustain such
bigger
animosity towards the world, whatever the case may be, or in the case again of the Southern Baptist Church, you would put all this pain and hurt under the rug, all the sexual assault stuff, but you would make critical race theory the center of our faith this year. But you're doing all of this really awful
over
stuff
here,
and somehow that moral piece doesn't
Jesus
connect.
It's
a whole disconnect.
Right.
And you see that same again in the Gospels. You see that's what the Pharisees represent. They know the right words. They do the right actions. They pray the right prayers. Prayer shawls of the right whatever. But they are hollow and bless you. No, they are hollow and dead inside. I thought you were turning to sneeze.
I thought there was going to be a sneeze, so I turned and then it ran away.
Yeah. So hollow and dead inside versus the Spirit comes and fills you to go out and be with all manner of folks.
Right.
Who before would have been called enemy or unfavorable or whatever the case may be. Other. Pentecost.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of Pentecost now. It's not just
barley harvest.
It's not just barley harvest. No,
barley
it's
harvest.
It's not just human candles.
It's not just human candles where the little flames come out and land on their heads, the little tongues of fire and such. Nah.
There's a lot more to it.
There's something to be said about this faith and having faith, having a personal faith. Why do we have a personal faith, Meg? Why? Why is a personal faith so important to our being a human being?
When I leave in 2 years, I will write you such a good answer to that question.
Because it's the only thing I ask you?
You'll never have to ask it again.
Good.
That's my plan.
That's your plan?
That's my plan.
I like that plan.
That's my plan.
What do you think?
Taboo on it.
And say goodbye?
Say goodbye.
Goodbye, Meg.
Goodbye, Tom.
And we'll see everyone next time. Talking about, you think this one was fun? We get to talk about Trinity Sunday, the Trinity next time.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
All right.
You better start reading up.